Alright, for this video, we're going to continue with this Todoey app, and I think I'm going to do probably one or two more. Although this has been an interesting project, has been pretty time consuming, and there are thousands of to-do apps out there already. So today, we're actually not going to do swipeable. Let's go ahead and add the category, again, following along with the course from App Brewery. And then in the next video, hopefully I'll be able to do some swipeability so you can delete items from your to-do list. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the biggest thing here is we're adding this new category. And so we're going to go to our data model, and we are going to add a new entity. And this new entity is going to be called category. I know in the App Brewery course they talk about being able to view some sort of data model or view it in kind of like a graphical format. As far as I can tell, in the latest Xcode, they've removed that feature. So you kind of have to think about the relationship yourself. Alternatively, you could browse directly to where the SQLite database is, open it in something else, and take a look at it through there. But this is a simple enough data structure and that I don't think we'll need to do that. So let's go ahead and add an entity, and we're going to call the entity category. And in that category, we are going to have one attribute. It's going to be the name of the category, and it will be a string. All right, so we are going to have that information, and we are probably going to also make it not an optional. So it's going to be a required field. And actually, before I continue any further, let's go ahead and run this. Let my system compile it. And that way, we can actually clear out all the data. I want to delete all the data before we get started, because if there's any data left in here, it's not going to be associated with the category. It might cause us problems. We'll go to Device, and we are going to erase all contents and settings. And when you hit erase, it will actually purge all the data. You'll get a crash out, but that's okay. All right, so let's go back in where we were, data model, a category. And now we need to associate this category with this item. And they go through it in the App Brewery class, but at a high level, we're going to create a relationship called items. The destination is the item, and the inverse, no inverse for right now, because we'll have to put a relationship in the item category, item entity as well. So if you think about it, we're going to have multiple items, and it's going to have a category associated with it. So for every category, you can have 5, 6, 7 different items, but each item can only belong to one category relationship. Basically, this means that a category can have many items. And so let's get this inverse in here. And we're going to go ahead and add the relationship, and they call it parent category. So this is the category that the item belongs to, and the destination again is category, and the inverse is that items that we just set up. So again, this is going to be a 2-1 type. So again, categories, the M for many, 1, O for 1. The idea is that we have one-to-many relationships. And other than that, we are good. Again, category, code gen is under class definition. We'll also change this to current product model over here. But class definition means that Xcode will generate behind the scenes these two files, except they'll be related to the category and not the item. For us, because we've manually generated this file, and we've now added this new relationship, when we run this code, it's not going to realize that there's this new relationship in here because we have decided to change it from class definition to manual and none. And remember, we had to do manual none because we want to add this wrapped title to help with filtering. So what does that mean? So there's two things you can do. One, we could remove this, save it aside, go to data model first, go to editor, and then create an NS managed object subclass. And we could recreate these two files. Now, and then we would have to put that this variable back in. Alternatively, we could just make the change directly. We know what we're going to add in here, and it's going to be basically at a high level an NS managed object, and you can kind of see, follow along with these other things. And this is part of the reason why I do like manually generating these files, because you can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. Public var, and we call it parent category, and it's going to be a type of category. All right. Now that we've added this, what I like to do usually is go ahead and clean the build folder just to make sure we have everything cleaned, and then I'm going to build everything again, so that using Command B. So again, that was build, and that way Xcode picks up on the fact that we've added this new entity called category, and that they have this relationship, and then we can start using it within our application here. All right, so now that we've added this new entity, let's go ahead and start using it. So the biggest thing I think we'll do first is we are going to go ahead and create our new category list view. And I know in the last one I actually changed this back to content view. In retrospect, we're going to change it again to the list view. So again, that's right click or control click, and we're going to refactor this, and I'm going to again call it ToDoList view. I should have not changed it to begin with, but we'll go back to ToDoList view, and I'll change it up here again. And down here, I think for the preview, I have to change it as well. So that way, we have just everything nice and clean, and in here we're calling the ToDoList view. Next, we will create a new file, and we will call this category list view. So again, it's a SwiftUI view. Next, I'm going to call it category list view, and we'll put it under the group of view, under the Todoey app. And now we have our standard template of a category list view. And again, if you think about it, it's going to be very, very similar to our to-do list view, right? We're going to be bringing back a lot of information, just like in our to-do list. So let's start with trying to put some of this category list view information together. So we'll start with our to-do list. We're going to again have the same thing. We're going to have an alert. So I want to take some of this stuff here. We're not going to have a search text, so I don't need that. And actually, what might make more sense is let's just go ahead and copy all of this entire struct here. In fact, we'll just copy this whole thing. We'll copy it, and then we'll put it right in category list view. So we'll just highlight all of this here, and we will just drop it right in here. All right, so let's go through it. We have a category, this category list view. We're going to have alert, so we'll leave these two in. This, if you recall, is for search text, so we don't need that. We'll take that out. We're going to need our environment, our managed context. And then down here, instead of doing an item, right? We're not looking for an item. We're actually looking for the category. So let's go ahead and sort on the category. And in the Todoey app, in the app brewery class, they sort it by alphabetical order. So we'll just follow the same thing. We'll go key path / and I'll just put a space here, category dot name, right? So we're going to have the category name, and we're going to delete state added. So again, now we're sorting by the name, so this is going to be alphabetical. And the variable, we'll just call it categories. And we're going to fetch the result of category. All right. And if you think back to our persistence model over here with, our persistence file over here, our data model stays the same, our container stays the same. So we are not needing to change anything there. All right. So now that we have our categories here, the next thing is let's go ahead and delete this. We don't need this. Go into our navigation area. So I'm actually going to change this navigation view to a navigation stack. I realized that navigation view was deprecated, so we're going to change this to a navigation stack. Next, we're going to go ahead and in this VStack, we want to actually pull in all the categories. So not this filter to-do list. So let's go to the filter to-do list, and we're just going to pull all of this in that we have here for now, So we'll copy all of this category to-do list. We're going to replace this line 23. Okay, so we're going to fetch each item. And I think I'm missing a curly brace somewhere in here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. So we have our list, and we are going to do, instead of a fetch request, we're going to do our categories, right? We pulled in this variable categories. So let's go ahead and copy that, put it in here. And we'll call it, instead of item, we'll call it cat. And here, we don't need a button because we're not pushing anything. We're going to actually do a navigation link. So let's go ahead and do a navigation link here. And if you look at a navigation link, we'll just take a look at the help file real quick. Oh, no help documentation. But basically within a navigation stack, if you have a navigation link, it behaves similarly to a button. You can click on it and it'll go on to whatever page you want to go on to next. And that's actually kind of the nice thing about SwiftUI. So you don't have to do segues and things like that. You just set it up through the navigation link. So the navigation link, we will have a destination. And our destination will be our to-do list view. All right. And our label, we'll have a label here. And we will make the label, so I'm going to hit enter on this to open it up, to put code within this area. And the label will be the text of the category name. Oops. The category name. That's all we're looking for. And as you recall, we need to, like down here, we need to unwrap this item. So, I'm sorry, we have to provide a value if it's nil, or force unwrap it. And we'll just do this and say category. And then I think that's it for our label. We're good here. We can actually remove all of this stuff here because we don't need any more of this stuff. Then if we look down here, we don't need the spacer because we're not having these checkboxes. We're not checking off any categories, so we delete all of this. So let's just take a look at what we have so far. A navigation stack, and in it a vertical stack, and we're just going to have each category. And for each category, we're going to kind of put it in a navigation link. Now, we should put this in a list. So I left out the list part, so let's put the list back in here. And I think I'm going to need another curly brace somewhere here. So we have a list. So for each category, we're putting a navigation link of a destination to-do view, and then we're going to have to pass the category in here somehow. So we'll get to that in a minute. But the text is going to be the category name. All right, we'll keep this as Todoey, and we'll remove the search text, the searchable bar. We don't need this because we're not searching on anything. Oops. But we do have a toolbar. We want to keep this toolbar because we want to be able to add category. All right, and now you can kind of see it's starting to render. And we'll say add new Todoey category and create a new category. And just to be explicit, we'll call this save category. Save categories. We'll call this save categories. We'll keep all of this the same. Print you entered text field, which is this piece right here. Let new, we'll just call this new cat of item category. And we'll keep the same context. And we'll just, it's only one field for this, new cat dot name is equal to text field. We don't have the done, we don't have the date added or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and delete all of this. We'll save it, and then we'll reset the text field to blank. So that is really it, I think, so far. This is just going to be our category view. Now, one thing that I do like to do is kind of maybe render some text in here to see. So here, under category list previews, we need to also pull in this persistent controller. So we're just going to copy this environment over here. And it won't work right off the bat. Why? Because it's actually looking for a persistence controller. Okay, so it's going to break. We'll ignore it for now. Preview, container, view context, right? So if we go into our persistence, it's looking for preview, which is trying to add a new item, which is really causing it some problems. So what we can do is let's just pull this out. And we're just going to do something here. We'll add a new preview. And perhaps we'll call this preview something else, like preview categories. We keep everything the same, except instead of new item being an item, right, this is going to be a new cat being a category item, still view context, and this is going to be new cat dot name is equal to, and again we'll just do a 1 to 10, right? Category 1 to 10. No date added, no boolean for done. Delete all of this, and then we're going to go back to our category list view, and we're going to change this to preview categories. And let's see if this works now. So while that's rendering, let's think about what we're going to do next. So we have our category view. The biggest challenge is passing what category they selected to the next link. So while this is rendering, let's think about in the AppReview class, they actually passed the category, which makes sense. So what we're going to do here is we are going to make this destination with a selected category. All right, so let me see if I can get this thing to render. I do want to make sure we can see something. So that rendered. Let's see if we can get this category view to render. There you go. So again, the category view is in alphabetical order, so that's why the 10 is after the 1. And if you click on it, the preview is going to crash because it's trying to go to to-do list view, but it is not. This has got some issues with it that is not allowing it to kind of pass it to the next view. So let's take care of some of these views. First, let's change this to a navigation stack. That way we can present views on top of this. And let's see if we can go ahead and run this now. Let's try to see where we are with our categories. All right, so we need a category, so let's add an item. Oh, you know what? It's not going to work. There was one part that we did forget, right? So on our save of our to-do list, we're going to have to associate it to the category. But we should be able to add categories. So again, let's run it, and let's go ahead and add Todoey item. Okay, so we're still adding items. So the last thing we need to do is we need to change where we come in, right? So again, in our app, we asked to go to the to-do list view, but now we need to go to the category list view. So change to category list view. All right, now let's run it. All right, so now we're in add category, right? And while I'm thinking about it, let's go to the to-do list view and make some changes. We don't have to run it again right now, but we're going to change this to items and add items right there. All right, good. So let's go back to my simulator. We'll add a category. First one will be groceries. And the groceries is there. Let's add a new category, animals. All right, so we have two categories, alphabetical order, as you can see. Now, if I click here, it'll probably crash. Let's see what happens. Oh, it does go into this next screen. So it's working pretty well. Now, the challenge is if I add an item, we didn't add any logic to save it to a particular category. So I'm not going to go ahead and do this. Now let's account for passing the category over. In our to-do list view, what I want is I want to be able to take a selected category, right? So we're going to do a binding wrapper. So this is a property wrapper type that can read and write from a value owned by a source of truth. So the source of truth will come from category. So we're going to do binding var selected category of type category. All right. And this preview will crash because of this thing. So so we're actually going to comment this out. So we don't need the preview right now. And so we've done the selected category. We've passed it in. What we need to do is we need to account for it, right? So now, in addition to passing it in, we need to filter our to-do list based on the search text and the category. So we're actually going to pass in the category. Selected category. We'll just call it the same variable. Is selected category. All right, so now in our filter to-do list, we're going to give it the filter if there's one, and then we're going to give it also the selected category. It's complaining there's an extra argument here because we have not also taken care of it in our filter to-do list. So in our filter to-do list, right, we are going to have to put it as part of our init. So we brought in the filter, and next we're going to also need to bring in the selected category as a type category. So hopefully you're following along with what I'm doing here. Basically, from the category, when they select a category, my hope is that I'm going to pass the category over. Then, once the category is passed in here, then I can use selected category wherever I need to within this particular view. And then I need to pass it again over here so that when I filter my to-do list, I can filter it based on this category. So we got to change this here. And the one thing that's a little bit different is when you have more than one predicate, you're going to use a compound predicate. So let's go ahead and just start writing this out. So we're going to do two variables. We're going to do a category predicate. Category predicate. And it's going to be an NS predicate. And I'm just going to copy this because I don't like to retype things. Right, so it's an NS predicate with the format parent category dot name matches whatever this value is going to be. And this is going to be this selected category passed in dot name. And I'm going to force unwrap that because I hopefully will be passing something that's not nil here. So that's part one. So again, that association that we made in the data model where we had this relationship, again, we pass it over here. This is the parent category name now matching the selected category name. Next, we need the filter predicate because we want to also filter it as an NS predicate again. And I'm going to, again, copy all this because I don't need to type this again. All right, so now we have these two predicates, and we're going to kind of keep the same logic. If the filter is not empty, we're going to keep this fetch request, but instead of putting in just one predicate, we're going to need both predicates. So let's take this part out, and it's going to be called NS compound predicate. and predicates with subpredicates, and takes an array. So we're going to do a category predicate and the filter predicate. All right, so hopefully you see what I did there. So now there's two types of filtering done on these, category and filter, if there's actually a filter value, and we combine it using this NS compound predicate. Else, there's no filter. We don't need to. The only predicate we'll need here is the category. So all we need is the category predicate if we don't need this filter predicate. All right, so that's it. Now when we go through our filter fetch request and we go through each of these, it should only show the ones that are part of that category and if there's a filter. Now we need to go back and fix our category view because we're supposed to be passing in the selected category. So the selected category is pretty easy. All we're going to do is pass in the category like that. Selected category is cat. Now it's in, which is this value right here. Now it's going to complain because I made this a binding property wrapper here, which means that it's going to complain because it needs to be a binding variable. And we can do that quite simply by doing something like this. We can do dot constant and send it over the category. Now let's go ahead and Command B and build it and see what happens. So the build has succeeded. And one thing that, the last thing that we'll need to do is, so now we have the filter, is that when we save our to-do over here, we also need to add in that parent variable, that parent relationship. So in our to-do list view, we'll go down here to the save items, and just to make sure, print, we'll say the selected category is, and we'll just say selected category.name. Remember, we passed this in way up here as a binding, so we can now access it. Let me make sure I did this right. All right. Okay, so we'll just force unwrap that, and we'll make the new item dot, and they have this now parent category property. And if you remember over here in our property file, we added this parent category, and that's where we're getting that relationship from. So back to our to-do list view. Parent category equals selected category. And then we save everything. So I think at this point, we're pretty much ready to test it. So let's go ahead and compile this, or build this, and see if everything works. So we have our two categories from before. Remember, I cleared out all the data. So let's go ahead and go into animals. Let's add an item. We'll call it dog, good, cat, good, monkey. All right, and the challenge is if we go back to Todoey and we go to animals again, we have all of our animals. If we go to Todoey, but we go to groceries, yes, I should see nothing. So let's add some groceries here. Apples. And you can see right here, it's saying, I am in the category groceries, and I've entered apples. Bananas. And so oranges. All right, so if I go back, and I go back to animals, I should see just my animals. And let me add another animal here just to make sure. Let's add a tiger. And let me add another animal with some letters that overlap. So ant, eater. And I'll also add an ant. And let's see if we can search on these. So the search bar has kind of disappeared. It's basically the way navigation, the navigation stack works. We kind of pull down a little bit like you do on some of the other iOS apps. Oh, I put any here, but let's see if AN. All right, there you go. So it's filtering correctly, and it's filtering within the category. The cancel should go back to Todoey. Groceries, I have my checklist here. I checked bananas. Go back to animals, nothing here. Go back to groceries, bananas is checked. So there you go. At this point, this is a pretty nice functioning Todoey app with the categories. At this point, I'm going to stop this particular video. I think the next one we'll try to do is make it swipeable, and that'll probably be my last one. And of course, before I finish, I want to commit everything. So we did adding categories. All right, let's commit these 8 files so that if we ever make any changes, we can always go back if we want to and mess something up. We can always go back. All right, thanks for watching, everyone.